things we want to go over today in terms of political party, the structure of parties, what they're doing, and how they operate. And the first thing that I want to go over with you is actually an article that was on Fox News, and it's about the difference between Democrats, even though they are of the same political party. And this kind of underscores the concept of the umbrella party. And Joe Manchin, our senator from West Virginia here, he and Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, a congresswoman from New York, uh, are at odds about how the party should proceed. Okay. And if you didn't see a few weeks ago, there was a picture on social media on the internet making its rounds where AOC was kind of given a death stare to Joe Manchin because Joe Manchin's much more of a moderate uh, um, Democrat than she is. And you can see right here it's talking about Joe Manchin appeared to slight Ocasio Cortez's work as a legislator, saying she's more active on Twitter than anything else. And it says Manchin, and it notes the fact that he's a moderate, made those comments after there was a photo of herself staring at him. And she was responding to his comments that were about the defund the police movement. And Manchin, look, you have to realize that he's taken a swipe at her, and in particular, uh, this phrase would definitely go right through somebody who's as liberal as her or anyone really, where he says, "I don't know the young lady," referring to a 31-year-old woman who is a congressman as a young lady is not something that you ordinarily do. This is a very passive aggressive shot at AOC, and he's kind of making it known that she's way more liberal and not really indicative of what he represents. Okay? Now, people like Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, who are the more liberal wing of Democrats, want to proceed with the party and the direction of the party in a different way. Okay? And in particular, it says House Democrats saw what's been described as a disappointing showing in November. You know, the moderate Democrats say that the party is embracing too many radical positions like defund the police and socialism, and it's costing them elections, right? So Joe Manchin, the Joe Manchins of the world, are in particular saying, look, we can't win elections with some of these radical ideas that mainstream America is not going to accept these phrases or these ideas. And even though they may be good ideas, America's not going to go for it. Okay, and you see that another a Congressperson here, Abigail Spanberger from Virginia, says we lost races we shouldn't have lost. Okay, defund the police almost cost me my race because of an attack ad. Don't say socialism again. We need to get back to basics, right? Uh, that group of people, this person is in line with what Joe Manchin wants, the more moderate wing of the Democrats, where you have people like Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, are saying that, have suggested that going for more progressive stances shouldn't be an electoral liability, meaning that, hey, there are a lot of people who want what we're talking about. So you have kind of this infighting in the Democratic Party because people have different positions within the party. They have just enough in common to essentially uh, get along on certain issues. And the same problem exists in the Republican Party. They are just a little more quiet about it right now. So, that's something to look at and realize that just because they have the same party affiliation doesn't mean that they're always going to get along. All right. Now, something else I want to run by you too, the different types of multiple choice questions on the AP exam, and you've seen these, but we've looked at different types of questions, the comparison questions, the ones where you also will have ones with text, blocks of text, the qualitative, you'll have quantitative where you have numbers or data that you have to interpret. You'll have the visual where you have a picture or some type of infographic or a political cartoon that you have to interpret. And then one that you've seen, concept application, meaning that you have to take multiple steps in thinking. Okay? So, for example, Which of the following best demonstrates the process of politicalization, socialization? It's not asking you what political socialization is. You first have to understand what political socialization is, and then you have to be able to apply it to a situation. Okay, and I'm going to put these questions in your folder today, and I want you to just take a minute and consider the answer. The second one, they're asking you this question's asking you about Shays' Rebellion. Okay, and it says proponents of the new Constitution cite Shays' Rebellion as an example in support of which of the following criticisms of the national government under the Articles of Confederation? That's a really long question, and you have to think about it for a minute. God forbid you do that, but you got this. Okay, so that you don't have to just know what Shays' Rebellion is. You have to understand its importance and apply it to why people who were for the Constitution said that Shays' Rebellion is very relevant, and why the national government under the Articles of Confederation was not appropriately handling its business. All right. So, like I said, I'll drop that in your folder, and we want to get back to political parties now. And we said, look, the party structure is different from the national, state, and local levels. We said, look, it's not a hierarchy like most people might think. It doesn't work like the Catholic Church does. The national, state, and local levels, they don't operate like the national Democrats or national Republicans don't tell state level parties what to do, and they don't just trickle it down to the local people. Okay, it works more of an overlap. All right, and I should probably put these circles closer together, because there is a lot of overlap. I don't want you to think they're radically different, but there are some issues that West Virginia Democrats or West Virginia Republicans don't feel the same way that the national level party leadership does. Okay, but we're going to briefly talk about each level, especially the national level. All right, national party leadership and what the national Democrats and national Republicans are up to is that they have a party structure where every 4 years they have a national party convention. Okay, and the National Party Convention, there are a lot of things that go on. And take a guess why they have it every 4 years. If you guessed that it coincides with a presidential election, you're absolutely correct. Okay, this year we had the National Democratic and National Republican Party conventions, and they were different because of COVID. But every 4 years, these party conventions occur, and there's a number of things that happen at the party conventions. First of all, at the party conventions, they officially nominate the candidates for, or their nominees candidates for president and vice president. That's where the official nomination takes place. Primary elections have decided this throughout a process, a long drawn-out process, but the official nomination occurs at the National Party Convention. All right. So every 4 years we have these party conventions, and during the party conventions they officially nominate their candidates for president and vice president. It's not the only thing going on, though. Okay, there are a series of speeches that are given by top flight people in each party. And the purpose of that is to build up the presidential and vice presidential candidate, to build support. At the same time, it's also to let people know the values of the party, and it kind of brings the party together to say, hey, we were fighting amongst ourselves during the primary season, but now it's time for us to all come together and defeat the candidate from the other party. And the speakers at each convention are usually people who are fairly well known within the party, individuals who are popular, they have a decent amount of support, at least in their home state, and have some type of name recognition in the country to where people want to tune in and watch and see what these individuals have to say and why they should support that particular candidate. And the conventions usually last for a couple of days, and the importance of the speakers builds with every day leading up to the final evening of the convention. And the final evening of the convention, you have the nominee for vice president and then the nominee for president speak to the party and to the nation as a whole. These events are televised because they want you to see these speeches. Right? They want you to understand what it is that they're putting out there for the United States. And like I said, you get high profile people. For example, on the Democratic side of things this time, they had on the evening before Joe Biden was going to speak, they had Barack Obama come out and give a speech, and he did a really good job at bolstering the Democratic support, even though the very conservative people in the country didn't really care for Obama. He was still a pretty popular president among the people who got elected by good margins in both of his elections for president. And so somebody like Obama still, brings a lot of support. Right now, not only that, but sometimes you bring in celebrities or people who are well known. The Republicans have brought in people like Clint Eastwood before. If you're not familiar with Clint Eastwood, he is a huge Hollywood name, and in 2012 he gave a really interesting speech, to say the least. But you want to bring in people who are going to help build up the party and help support the candidate going forward. All right. So these conventions take place over a matter of days, but it's not just about giving speeches either. You also want to develop the party platform. Okay. And party platforms, those are literally the issues that your party stands on. All right. You're saying these are the things that we want to do and the ideas that we want to enact if we get our candidates elected into office. All right. And each individual issue in the party platform is called a plank. I swear I'm not making this up. A platform is literally something you stand on, and each part of a platform is called a plank. Now, party platforms, do you write them specifically or do you write them in a vague sense? That's a question you should be considering. And the answer is this: you always want to go for vague. And the reason why that you write your party platform in a vague capacity is that you want to give yourself some wiggle room. If you make a promise that you're going to do something specific and you get elected and you don't do it, people will hold it against you in the next elections. Right? George H.W. Bush in 1988, when he ran for president, made a pledge to the American people where he said, part of the Republican platform was they weren't going to raise taxes. And he literally came out and said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." And because of some financial problems and Democrats getting control of Congress, they put him in a position where he had to agree to raise taxes. And believe me, people who were his political opponents in 1992 made sure that everybody remembered that. Now, if we go to their website, I just want to show you this for a minute as well. Democratic. The Democrats. Let's take a look at Democrats. And you see there, they've got everybody wearing a mask. You got Biden and Kamala Harris. And where we stand. Ooh, well, that's lovely. Here's the official party platform. Okay? And every form, we can look at that. We could even download it if we want to. And you see they have it in particular things here. Healing the soul of America. This sounds good. Democrats believe in bringing the American people together, not stoking division and distrust. That sounds really sweet. Let's see what we can do. Protecting civil rights. Democrats are committed to ending discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, language, gender, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability status. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to appoint Supreme Court justices and federal judges who look like America, are committed to the rule of law, and uphold. This sounds all really nice and well and good, but it's not as specific as we want. And then achieving racial justice and equity. Do you think anybody doesn't want racial justice in the world? All right. I think that most Americans would agree that, look, achieving racial justice is a good thing. I don't think Republicans are against achieving racial justice. But you say this as a sense of how do we get there? All right. And Democrats are like, oh, well, we want race neutral policies. We want a comprehensive approach to embed racial justice in every element of our government agenda, including job creation, workforce and economic development, etc. Right? And they use, if you look at it though, they do use certain phrases that matter to them, like Black Lives Matter, right? We will establish a national commission on examining lasting effects of economic effects of slavery, right? And they give you a broad sense of what they want to do. And unemployment rates are higher for people of color, okay? Why is that the case? We want to work on that. We're going to invest in low-income communities, right? By the way, do you think that Republicans don't want to invest in low-income communities? Some of this stuff is very standard, right? So let's take a look at some other things real fast, right? Restoring and strengthening our democracy, creating a 21st century immigration system, that's a little different too. Providing a world-class education in every zip code. Do you think there's somebody who doesn't want to do that? Right? The real question is, how do we get there? All right, and you can look at these on your own, but we're going to go over to the GOP real fast. Actually, I better specifically figure that out. Go on my GoPro. GOP party. Ah, there we go. It's just GOP.com. Who knew? Oh, 1,000% offer extended. Contribute now. Well, that's going to be a hard pass for me. There's no X. How do I get off that? There we go. Ah, all right. So let's see here. There's lots of, by the way, both parties will have, like, if you look, there's always a donate or a contribute button, and they want your money. That's one thing both parties want. Volunteer platform. All right. Resolutions about resolved. We want the president's agenda. That's 2016 platform, but that'll work for our purposes. Okay, both of them have a preamble. That's great. That's wonderful. All right. Restoring the American dream, the rebirth of constitutional government, government reform, education. I mean, they got the same ideas, all right? And if you look at them, I mean, like, let's look at our tax principles. To ensure that past abuses will not be repeated, we assert that these fundamentals. We oppose retroactive taxation. We condemn attempts by activist judges at any level of government to seize the power of the purse from the people's elected representatives. I mean, we're trying to guard against the hyper-taxation of the American people and the restructuring of the tax system. And, I mean, some of the things that they want, that they're aiming for, like I said, it's more rhetoric than it is actual policy changes, right? Because you don't want to be too specific. Building the future with technology. The digital revolution has transformed how we work, learn, sell, shop, etc. So we need to focus on STEM education. Shocking, all right? A lot of this stuff is not a big deal in that regard. Now, at the party conventions, they're tweaking the party platform. They're trying to figure out what is it that we stand for, what are the issues, and what are the important issues. All right? Now, at the convention, you are building up momentum for your candidates. You officially nominate your candidate for president, vice president. There's a series of speeches to build support and bring the party together and change the platform. Now, one other thing about these conventions, who do you think are the people, like, what's the ideals or the type of person that goes to, say, like the Democratic Party convention or the Republican convention? Do you think they're the diehard party faithful or the more moderate folks? And the answer is they are the ones who are the more ideological people. If you go to the Republican National Convention, you're going to find some very conservative people. If you go to the Democratic National Convention, you're going to find some really liberal people. You know, a lot of the moderates don't go to those things. Those are your diehard people, all right? But between the conventions, there's a lot that goes on as well, all right? Between the party conventions, the parties are not just sitting still idly by and just waiting for the next election and the next convention. There is a party chairperson and a party committee, national party committee, and their job is to work between conventions to plot strategy about how to win elections, to try to influence the people in office about enacting policies and figuring out what we can do to get better for the next election. So, for example, Democrats, even though they won the presidency here in 2020, they didn't perform as well in congressional elections and Senate elections. And not just that, but remember, there's still 2 Senate seats in Georgia that are going to be runoff elections. And so Democrats are saying, how can we win those 2 seats? What are we going to do if we win those 2 seats? What are we going to do if we lose those seats? And how can we win elections again in 2022 when all House members and a third of the Senate are up for re-election? And we got to start thinking about 2024 as well, right? You're always thinking about the future. You've got to remember the functions of a political party. Your main goal is to get people elected. So if your main goal is to get people elected, you got to start recruiting candidates, figuring out which candidates to support, who's going to support your issues, where do we devote our money, what are the races that we can win, okay? Where are the races where we're going to have a difficult time or we shouldn't focus as many resources? How are we going to do fundraisers? How can we get around rules and regulations that keep us from winning elections? Those party committees and the party chairperson are trying to do that. If we go back to the websites of each ones, you'll see it. And the party people, the leadership in each party, usually people that you've never heard of. Okay, and it doesn't mean that they're not important, but they usually kind of stay out of the spotlight. And let's see here, GOP rules, groups, issues. I'm looking for leadership. Where were you? I thought I saw you. Apparently, you guys probably see it before I will. National GOP leadership. Right. Right now, the chairperson is Ronna McDaniel. Right. Most people don't know it, but that's Mitt Romney's daughter. Right. She is the National Party chairwoman, and you see that there are other leadership officers, and they work with their people in the Senate. Like, for example, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell regularly meets with, well, no, I wouldn't say regularly, but meets with and communicates regularly with the Republican National Committee, and his job and other party leadership job is to plot strategy and plot what policies are working, what's not working, etc. So you see these people are constantly working together to try to come up with good policies and ideas. Democrats, same concept. Let's find their leadership, who we are. It's great. Notice that they have their En Espanol on here as well. And what we do, our history about the Democratic Party, our leadership. Let's check them out. Right. Tom Perez, the National Party chairperson, and he obviously works very closely with the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, the Vice Chair, the Treasurer, etc., etc. So these individuals are plotting strategy and figuring out how to use the resources of the Democratic Party. And remember, they're trying to appeal to a broad base of people, and so are Republicans now. The growth in in the minorities, racial minorities, religious minorities, has caused both parties to make a concerted effort to reach out to both of those groups. And what I was pointing out here with Democrats have a Spanish version of their website because the Hispanic community is by and large supporting the Democratic Party, and they want to make sure that they represent those ideas and that those individuals, those Hispanic members of the party, have access to the right information. Okay? So the National Party leadership is constantly working, right? And we want to mention this about state leadership. State leadership works in a similar fashion. West Virginia Democrats, they do the same thing. West Virginia Republicans, they do the same thing every 4 years, which it coincides with the presidential and the governor's race here. They have a state party convention where they discuss their platform, their strategy, their leadership. They have a committee chair. They have a statewide committee who are plotting strategy in the state, right? And the same thing happens on the local level also. And the last thing we want to mention is that, like, for example, here in West Virginia, county by county, we have, like, for example, there's Cabell County Democrats and Cabell County Republicans. And one of the things that they spend a lot of time on is just recruiting people to run for offices at the local level, because it can be really difficult to get people to run for various offices around here. Getting folks to run for Cabell County Commission, like, it's not a prestigious thing at all. And sometimes it's really difficult to get people involved, or to run for city council or town council in Barboursville, right? It can be difficult to get people to want to get involved because a lot of times it's a thankless job, right? Except if you're in big cities. If you're in a big city, even things like being on a city council or being the mayor, of, say, for example, New York City, that's a big deal. Okay, and so big cities, you used to see, and these are not as big as they used to be, but in big cities, you used to see what's called a party machine. All right. Party machines are really tight political organizations that happen at the local levels, and they work on like a reward system. Okay, so party machines usually trade in favors for people. For example, if I help you get a job, I'm like, hey, you remember to vote Democrat and tell your friends to vote Democrats, because I am going to represent the Democratic Party, and daggone it, we want you to make sure that you support our candidates. And party machines, they also rely heavily on loyalty. All right, and not just with the voters, but with their own people. So let's say, for example, I'm the head of the local party machine in the Huntington area, and you want to run for office, and candidate A wants to run for office for state legislature, and so does candidate B, and these are both people in my political party. Candidate A always shows up to rallies, meetings, does all the grunt work, helps campaign, but candidate B misses, and doesn't really come to events as much. Well, I'm going to say candidate A is the person that the party's going to support because they're loyal. All right. And I know that if I need their vote in a clutch situation, they'll vote the way that I and the party want them to. Even if candidate B is smarter and more capable, we're going to support the person that's loyal to us. All right. Um, so look, that's party structure at the national, state, and local levels.